Again, welcome back. My name is that's the source sheets. My name is Yitzchak Etshalom, and officially, I'm honored to be studying with you, studying Tanakh with you. And again, tremendous thanks to Rabbi Helfgott, a dear old friend for many decades, who works tirelessly to educate Jews of all ages, all around, and assiduously works hard during the year to make sure that these Yemei Iyun are successful, and hopefully he enjoys a lot of the peirot of that effort. Speaking of peirot, I want to talk about an unusual episode that takes place in Breshit, but I want to comment first on what some of the significance of this episode may be in a vein that we're not maybe accustomed to thinking of. If I was to ask you if a particular person in Tanakh, we'll take, let's say, Haman, for example, don't make noise. Haman, for example, is a good guy or a bad guy? What would your reaction be? Haman, bad guy, you'd be born, right? How do you know he's a bad guy? He's never called Haman HaRasha. Oh, he is in our songs. But he's never called Haman HaRasha in the text. So yeah, you can say Haman Sorek Kol HaYudim. Okay, fine. But how about Esav? What do you think? Esav's never... Depends. Shkoyach. All right, good. Depends. All right. Very good. For those of you listening to the recording, check the other recording. All right. You're right. But is Esav ever called a Rasha? Matter of fact, very few people, with the exception of the biographies of the kings, very few people are actually given a title which affirms they're being good guys or bad guys. All right? Where Hashem turns to Avram and says, Atah yadati ki yireh Elohim ata, but we don't hear that as a description of Avraham. We hear it, by the way, as a description of Eov, who may have never existed. But we don't hear it there. Yeah, we had a question.
Well, we know he's a
What's
bad
your name?
person because my name is Gila.
Gila,
He's a
good,
bad
yeah.
person because of what he did.
Very good. So Gila immediately punctures what I was saying excellently, which is that we can figure out who he is by what he does. But then again, how do we know that what he does is a bad thing? You see what I'm saying? Like we have to kind of either start with a base.
That everybody can agree that killing people is a bad thing.
Where do we ever see Esav killing anybody?
Well, that he wanted to
Wants to. People get angry, okay? And Esav has a hot temper, and by the way, he cools down pretty quickly. Yaakov doesn't know that, but he seems to cool down quickly. So we know he's got a hot temper. But there are people with hot tempers. Pinchas seemed to have a hot temper. We like him. So what I'm pointing out is that Tanakh rarely passes explicit judgment on someone, and we have to figure it out. So Gila points out very sharply that we have to figure out who they are by what they do. If we start with a base of we know what's right and wrong, they did wrong, and that's their defining act, because everybody makes mistakes, then we'll say that they're bad people. I think there's another way that Tanakh communicates. It's not to the exclusion of that, but to add to that. Let me take a different example, and then we'll get to ours. What do you think about Lot? Good guy or bad guy? The reason I use that phrasing is years ago, I was actually coming here to give a shiur about Yoav. And I came up to a colleague, a week before, sat down with him at the lunch table and said, what do you think? Yoav, good guy or bad guy? And that kind of became the way we talked about this stuff. Yoav's really kind of a question. So what about Lot? Good guy or bad guy? What do you think? Avi, what do you think?
Overall good.
Overall good. Okay? I'm going to take a position, and I hope I don't get sued by Lot's descendants, because we know who they are. Mamzerim that they are. I think Lot's a bad guy. The reason I think Lot's a bad guy is because sometimes the way Tanakh will tell us about who somebody is by giving us the last story is the way we're supposed to remember them. Lot was loyal to Avraham. Lot was silent in Mitzrayim about Sarah's real identity. Right? Lot was very hospitable to two guys who came to destroy the town. And yet, what's the last story we hear about Lot? Lot's in a cave in West Virginia with a bottle of Blue Ripple and two pregnant daughters. Not a great story. And that's the last we hear of him. And so I believe that Tanakh is using that as a vehicle to tell us, and by the way, Midrash does this, because the Midrash then reads back on Lot negative stuff. It reads backwards, it retrofits the image of Lot as a bad guy onto other things he's done. I'll give you another example. Right? Lavan, in spite of his name, good guy or bad guy? Bad guy. And you know he's a bad guy because? What? Because he is somebody's father-in-law. That makes him a bad guy. I get it. Right. What? He cheats his son-in-law, according to his son-in-law. Important to note that. No, according to his son-in-law. Take a look. Right? His son-in-law says. I'm not saying it didn't, but let's remember this is a claim and counterclaim. I agree with you, Lavan's a bad guy, because what's the last thing we see about Lavan? Lavan admitting, I wanted to come and hurt you, but God intervened and said I can't. Was Lavan always a bad guy? It doesn't seem like it. But what do we then do midrashically? The minute we meet Lavan, he becomes a bad guy. When Lavan comes out to meet Abraham's slave, who's come to find a wife, he embraces him, and the midrash says he embraces him to see if he's hiding gold. And he can get it from him. He's a thief, he's deceptive from the beginning. And that's something we do, we retrofit because the last story of Lavan tells us that. Parenthetically, why is his name Lavan? Anybody know? Where's Lavan come from? What? It comes from Haran. All right? Haran, there was a cult that worshipped the moon. Which is why his name Lavan. That's why he had an ancestor whose name was Terach, as in Yereach. Just a little thing to have fun. Yeah, what's your name? Ayala, yeah.
Wasn't Shlomo Hamelech's last story not good?
Yeah, that got me into hot water in school. I'm not going to talk about it. But Shlomo is a problem. Shlomo's difficult. You're right. Good point. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that his whole life he was like that. But how are we supposed to take it? What's the takeaway? By the way, Chazal raked Shlomo over the coals. There's a passage in Yerushalmi where, you know the Mishnah in Sanhedrin that says there were 3 kings who didn't have a chelik in Olam Haba? So the Yerushalmi says that they wanted to include Shlomo on the list. And then David begged them to take it out, and they did. I mean, Chazal are ready to take Shlomo apart too. But they didn't work where I work. Yeah.
Do you think it's a little unfair to
Absolutely. Go ahead.
qualify somebody as a Rasha or a tzaddik? Everybody is multidimensional.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vivian. Excellent. People are multidimensional. Nobody is all this way or all that way. Every great person makes mistakes. And everybody who's wicked has their own narrative. John Dillinger did not understand why the feds were after him. Serious. Thought he was a good guy. But besides that, there are even the people who are wicked, most of them, I'm not got a problem with, but most of them have good things they do. You know, it's not one or the other. Agreed. The character, the way that we then put him into our historic and meta-historic imagination, takes on a caricature type image of either amazing or the opposite. But if I were to ask you now to the point, what do you think of Noach? Now, I know you're going to say Noach is one of those exceptions because he gets a title. What's the title? Noach Ish Sadiq Tamim Hayab B'Dorotav. But the title gets kind of tarnished by the last word I said. Okay, so now, what does the word Sadiq mean? Let's talk about this for a minute because we can't understand Noach otherwise. What does the word Sadiq mean? So I will tell you a story, apropos of nothing, but it's just such a great story. There is a yeshiva ktana in our town, Chassidish yeshiva ktana, and there's a woman who teaches 4th grade English there. And you know when you teach, at that age, you give kids vocabulary words, they have to come back and with sentences for each word, right? So one of the words that she gave that week was righteous. Righteous. And so one of the kids came in the next day and he had sentences. And one of the sentences for righteous was, my brother has long righteous. She looks and I said, what the heck is this? She goes, my brother has long righteous. She goes, I don't understand. He says, I looked up righteous in the dictionary. It says pious. Right? It really happened. Okay. Again, I phone nothing. But the word tzaddik, what does tzaddik mean? So in modern Hebrew, tzaddik is sometimes, by the way, used sometimes as a dismissive term. But in proper language, tzaddik means somebody who is really above and beyond in their ethical behavior. What does tzaddik mean in Chazal? Tzaddik, the Chazal give a definition. Somebody who has more zchuyot than avonot. And then what does tzaddik mean in Tanakh? Because language changes, language evolves. And rabbinic Hebrew is not the same as biblical Hebrew. And by the way, biblical Hebrew is not the same as biblical Hebrew. Words are used very differently in Bereshit than they are in Divrei Hayamim. What does tzaddik mean through most of Tanakh when applied to a person, not God? God is just. What does it mean when talking about a person? And the answer is almost always it means innocent. Innocent. In the context, Sefer Dvarim, the Beit Din, v'hirshiu et harasha v'tzdiku et hatzadik. You find the guilty person guilty and the innocent person innocent. What did Avram plead for in the context of his negotiations over Sodom? Chamishim tzadikim. Because it's unjust, lahamit tzadik im rasha. Tzadik means innocent. You can't kill the innocent with the guilty. And so the word tzaddik seems to mean that. Noach ish tzaddik means, simple pshat, he was innocent of whatever crime the rest of humanity was guilty of, and therefore bid dorotav. And the famous midrash on bid dorotav, if he was an Avram's generation, it'd be a nothing. Okay, so if I ask you about Noach, you're going to leave it open. Now you're going to say, Noach saved all of humanity. Kinda, sorta, okay. But what we're going to look at is the last story of Noach. And what is the imprint that the Torah wants us to take away from Noach? Now, I hope I don't get sued by Noach's descendants, because that's everybody. But we look at the last story of Noach. When we walk away from him, we have a man who, well, we'll see what happens. But one thing that we all know is he's cursing his own kids. So let's read the story and see what's going on. You will notice that this story has numerous problems in the 12 psukim that are here. And some of the problems are highlighted in color. And this is after the Mabul, after the Brit, after the Korbanot, and just before the Table of Nations. Meaning, right after this, the next psukim are the list of Toldot Shem and Toldot Cham, and then there's the Begats. There's two separate genealogies. Vayuvne Noach yotzim min hateva Shem v'Cham v'Yafet. Is that an age order? Not necessarily. Not. V'Cham hu avichanan. What immediately catches your eye when you read that? Besides the fact that it's in blue. What immediately catches your eye when you hear that line? Ari.
Very rarely does time out to say who's the father of something.
Exactly. And by the way, B'nai Noach Hashem v'Cham v'Yafet. Why didn't you tell me? You want to do this? Take Shem hu avi Aram. Right? Give me the whole yichus. Dafka to pick on Cham, and Dafka to tell me Cham's son is Canaan, when we later find out that Canaan is son number 4 out of 4, his youngest son, is pretty weird. Okay, it's weird. Keep it in mind. Shlosha Eila b'nei Noach, which of course means Shlosha Eila is Shem Cham Yafet. Canaan is not part of that. Ume'ela naftzah chol haaretz, meaning Shem Cham Yafet are going to be all of humanity. There's going to be the Semites, the Jeptites, and the Hamites. All right, now, Vayachal Noach ish ha'adama vayita karam. Right? So what's Noach's first thing to do when he gets out of the Teva? Brought the Korbanot, gets the Brit, it's all good. Let's get back to real life. What's the first thing he does? Plants a vineyard. You think that's a good thing or a bad thing? There's nothing, it's neutral. It's just what he chose to do first. Nothing particularly wrong with it. It does mean, by the way, that besides animals, they kept certain plants, because we would assume they got destroyed in the Mabul, but not our concern. He plants a Karen. Now here's where we have the Kriyat HaTorah challenge. The reason I say that is because when we're hearing Kriyat HaTorah or reading a parsha, we read, Vayachal Noach ish ha'adama vayitakarim vayesh min hayayin vayishkar, and we assume that 13 seconds after he planted the Karen, he's drinking wine. Because it's the next pasuk. You know, if the Baal Kriya said, okay, I'm going to come back in 3 years, we'll pick it up, you'd have a lot of complaining on the board, and it wouldn't be good. But in the story itself, what do we assume happened after pasuk Chaf, before pasuk Chaf Aleph? Several years passed. Right? You plant the Karen, it takes a while. And I'm not even concerned with Orla here, but it takes a while before the grapes become mature enough. Then you've got to process the grapes and stomp the grapes, we talked about last session, and then let them ferment, and probably a few experiments till he gets it right. In the meantime, now the reason I'm pointing that out is because there's going to be another time gap in the Parsha that we'll have to see. Vayesh min hayayin vayishkar. Okay? And you guys are going into high school, so you're ready for this. Anybody else below high school? Great. Okay. Incoming freshmen are ready for this. Vayesh min hayayin vayishkar. What does Noach do? He drinks and he gets drunk. And by the way, we can excuse him that he had no idea what the impact of wine would be. Right? Good. Lot's going to use the same excuse later. Right? Vayitgal b'toch ohalo. What does vayitgal mean? It's short for vayitgaleh. Which means he becomes exposed in ohalo. Which means? His tent. Look at the spelling of ohalo, though it's a little weird.
Excuse me, why do you assume that Noah did not know the effects of wine to begin with?
No, I'm just trying to be nice to him. Okay, thanks.
I mean, it was a world before.
Yes, but there's been a long time, and you're right. It could be that Noach knew very well, and Noach is trying to forget everything, and it could be he's the corner bar has been wiped out, so this is the corner bar. Could be. Noach is drunk, lying evidently naked in his own tent. Vayar cham avichanan eter vat aviv. And again, we get that weird descriptor.
Do you want to make a comment about the weird spelling of all?
Yeah, I'm going to get back to it. Yeah. Ohalo is spelled weird. We'll get back to it. I want to go through just the psukim and point out the difficulties. Vayar cham avichanan eter vat aviv. What does Cham see? His father's nakedness. Vayagev l'shnei achav bachutz. That means that his brothers are standing somewhere outside, maybe standing guard and maybe just hanging out. And he goes over and what does he say to them? No, don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. What did he say?
You'll never believe what I saw.
Okay. And what did you see? Daddy's drunk and naked. Okay. Now, before we go further, how do we judge Noach's behavior till this point? What?
I would say neutral.
Neutral. I'm going to give it a little bit of a negative shake, but not sinful. It's like, this is not role modeling. And, if this was on his resume, he might not get the job. But it's not sinful. What about Cham? What about Cham's behavior? What? He walked in. Maybe he walked in and asked his father a question. That's what he saw. Maybe one came in to have a l'chaim. That's what he saw. I don't know.
Maybe he was waiting for this moment.
We don't know. But based on what we have here, Cham sees his father naked, goes out and tells his brothers. Do we judge this as positive, negative, neutral? What do you think?
So it's unclear because we don't know what he says. He could have said, don't go in the tent.
Right, we don't know. Again, just based on what we have.
It's unclear.
Positive, negative, or neutral? What do you think? What's your name? Sorry.
Jenna,
Jenna, go ahead.
it seems pretty disrespectful to me.
Disrespectful because what should he have done?
I mean, why is he talking about it? Just walk out the tent, leave it.
And don't say a word, and then let his brothers have the same problem.
No, we should have cut.
Right?
No,
I'm just asking.
Maybe just stay
So
outside.
I'm going to go halfway with you, Jenna, and I'm going to take it a little differently. Maybe we would like him to go outside and say, guys, you have a blanket. Right? I'm not telling you why I'm going to go camp out and go in and cover his father. Right? Maybe we would like that. But again, it's kind of hard to see this as sinful behavior. It's kind of like Noach being drunk. It's not something we would want to put on, the this is your life kind of thing. But, okay, so right now we have behavior that we'll say is maybe unseemly on everybody's part, Noach's part and Cham's part, but nothing earth-shattering. Now, by the way, what's Cham called again here? Cham Avichanan. Again, kind of a weird way to describe it. Now, what happens? Shem vayafet. What do they do? Vaikach shem vayafet tasimla. By the way, what's the grammatic problem in that sentence? What? Vaikach. What should it say? Vaikhu. Very good. Ayala, right? Okay. So Ayala points out it should say Vaikhu. That's not the only time it happened. It happened last week at the end of the parsha. Vatdaber Miriam v'Aharon. Right? What does that mean when you have two people doing something but it's in the singular? One person initiates it. Very good. Miriam's the one who initiates as evidence for your punishment. Very good. Here, Shem seems to be the leader, as we see from the blessing later. Shem seems to be the leader of protecting his father's dignity, but Yefet goes along with him. Excellent. All right. Vasimu al Shechem shnehem. So they put a garment on their shoulders. Vayachu achoranit. They walk into the tent backwards. Vayachasu et ervat avihem. They cover up ervat avihem. Ufnehem achoranit. And they're looking backwards, again stressing that. Ervat avihem lo ra'u. All right, so by the way, the picture we get is, just describing it, Noach gets drunk, naked in his tent. Well, by the way, we have no idea why he got naked. He's drunk, he should be asleep. He's in his tent without clothes on. Cham walks in, sees it, goes outside and says, hey guys, guess what I saw? They walk in like this and cover him, they don't see him. That's the story. Now at this point, if we're reading it that way, we would maybe say Noach is nobody to put up as a role model. Cham, okay, he's lesser of the brothers. And Shem and Yefet seem to be good guys. Nobody comes out of this a hero, and nobody comes out of this a villain. Which you got to wonder, so why is the story in here? But what gets really strange is the reaction. Yeah.
Although there is a question why it's not Sheva, why Cham doesn't at least join them in their action.
Okay, good. So again, we'll put Cham as being the lesser of the brothers. But again, it's not sinful. Right? Yeah.
Do we take this as the first time that Noah got drunk?
Say it again?
Is this the first time?
I don't have his history. I wasn't at the AA meeting.
I'm saying.
We can't assume anything.
Why would it be a surprise?
We can't assume anything. We just don't know. Yeah, what's your name, sir?
Bruce.
Bruce, go ahead.
So I think it's unusual that he chose to do a vineyard instead of growing food.
Okay, that's fine. And we can critique Noah for doing that.
Normal.
Okay, but again, and we don't know that that's necessarily the first thing to do. Vayachal Noach Isha Adama Vayitakam could be two statements. He starts planting stuff, and then he plants a kam. We don't know. And, again, the Kerem, you could say, and there are Midrashim, again, that do the same thing. They read the end of the story of Noach, and then they read it back and find Noach to be sinful along the way. And one of the things is, look at how terrible. The first thing he did was plant the vineyard instead of. That's the Midrash. But some of Pshat, I don't think that's here. So let's take a look at what happens. This is where things really get weird. Vayiketz Noach mi'eno. So Noach wakes up. Starbucks. Vayeda et asher asalo b'no hakatan. What happens when he recovers from his drunkenness? What does it say? What does it say? What? He knows what his b'no hakatan did to him. Okay, so let me ask you a question. You guys going to camp? You going to camp? Okay, good. So I remember being in camp. You guys remember camp? Okay, camp's the best. All right, you're in camp, and while you're in camp, you find out that in the middle of the night, somebody from an older Eidah or somebody from a came in and did something, like watched it, and then they come the next day and they say, oh, you were sleeping funny, right? But if they don't tell you that, are you going to know that they came in? No, you're asleep. So what is there for Noach to know? He came in, what? What's your name? Liel? Okay, so Liel says, maybe what he realized was the blanket. What's this blanket doing on me? But that doesn't answer the question because it says what his B'no HaKatan had done to him. And you raise a good point. Noach was probably aware there was something fishy because of that. But how would he know who did what? Very strange.
Maybe it was his
Yeah,
Simcha.
Sorry, give me what?
He was the youngest one's Simcha.
He was the youngest?
Maybe it was the youngest one's clothes that put on. I'm sorry.
Right, but then it wouldn't be Asher Asalo, it'd be Asher Asa Avuro. Asalo means something he did to him as opposed to, to help him, right? Yeah, John.
It seems that we're missing something.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's
why we have a shir.
It seems
Right.
that part of the story is missing, where there must have been, when his son came in, there must have been some kind of interaction that we're not getting.
Oh, interaction's a good way to put it. Okay, good. Yeah, what's your name?
But,
Okay.
we don't technically know who's youngest though.
Correct. And we don't know, and that's why there's also Midrashim, B'no HaKatan might be Canaan, because the youngest son of Cham, etc. Simple pshat in here, B'no HaKatan is referring to Cham, but does that mean Cham is the youngest? Or does it mean that Cham is not the oldest? Or does it mean that Cham is now the reduced son?
In that case then, but if it is that so strange that like this is when we're finding out. I mean, that's also something to look into.
Right, very good. Excellent. You make great. Remember your name again?
Naomi.
Sion.
Naomi.
Naomi. Okay, good. All right. Sorry, I need another cup of coffee. So Naomi points out that if B'nai Katan actually means age-wise, and it's Cham is the youngest, and that now we're finding out is the youngest, is kind of strange also. The whole setup is strange. But again, the bigger question is, what's to find out? And Jenna, you're right. There's something missing here. So let's take a look at how it proceeds, then we'll try to figure out what's going on. Vayomer Arur Kanan. Now, if the way we read it so far is what happened, this reaction, to say this reaction is over the top, is an understatement of cataclysmic proportions. To say, my son came in and saw me while I was sleeping and didn't cover me up, and therefore he's cursed, and it is like over the top. You think he's still drunk when he's saying this. Arur Kanan. Now, who does he curse? Why Canaan? And this is what leads some of the Midrashim to say that actually it was Canaan who did this. Eved Avadim Yelachav. Kind of a strange phrase, which is, he's going to be, an Eved Avadim seems to be saying like, an extremely enslaved and also like kind of like in perpetuity. To whom? Now, who's Canaan's brothers? Hut and Mitzrayim. In other words, the other sons of Cham. So that means Cham's 3 sons will have a perpetual slave, and their 4th son, the youngest, will be their slave. Okay, Vayomer, and then he says, Baruch Adonai Elohei Shem. He blesses Hashem, who's the God of Shem. V'hi Chanan Eved Lamo, and Canaan will be his servant. Wait a second. Is Canaan serving his brothers or his uncles? Yaft Elohim liyafet. This is a play on words. Right, but both these are plays on words. We call them Midrash Shem. Yefet is his name, but Yaft means to spread out. So Yaft Elohim liyafet. God should spread out, give Yefet lots of kids, lots of territory. And by the way, the whole world's there is fine. V'yishkon bo alei Shem. He will dwell in the tents of Shem. It's a famous Midrash about the utilization of Greek philosophy in Torah. Yaft Elohim liyafet, v'yishkon bo alei Shem. And v'hi Chanan Eved Lamo, and Nachamo. Canaan will be serving his uncle. Uncle Shem, Uncle Yefet. So who is he the slave of? And then we have the closure here, which parallels the opening. And again, this is the end of Noach. We never hear about Noach again, save for that unusual passage in Yeshayahu Nun Daled and passage in Yechezkel. But Noach disappears from the scene in Bereshit. And this is the last story we have of him. So Chazal quoted Jenna and say, we have a problem here. They say, something had to happen here for there to be the cause. You turn the page, and you'll see what the solutions are. Famous Midrash quoted by Rashi in his commentary on Chumash. Midrash that shows up in Sanhedrin. Rav Shmuel, Chadamar Serso v'Chadamar Riva'o. So we have a machlok between Rav and Shmuel. And by the time the Talmud Bavli is being edited, we've lost the tradition of which one said what, but we know that one said that what Cham did was he castrated Noach, and the other is that he sodomized Noach. Now, why the word in English is sodomized, that's a whole other shir. But he raped him. Now, first of all, this explains something, and then it leaves a bigger gap. It explains why Cham is so dastardly. It explains what Noach knew because something was physically done to him. And it explains Noach's what seemed to be over-the-top response. Where did they get that from? Well, it starts with a question, which is, well, something more had to happen than just looking at him to make this work. Why would he do that? And so Rashi quotes a Midrash that says that Noach, that Cham's motivation in castrating him, that perspective, was he didn't want Noach to have another kid. Why? Because I'd rather split the world 3 ways than 4 ways. It all comes down to the money. And that Noach's response is, you castrated me and prevented me from having a 4th kid to serve me in my old age. Think Naomi at the end of Ruth. I'm going to curse your fourth son, Canaan, that he'll be a slave. Okay, we then also build another bridge. We understand why Canaan, Nebuch, is the result of this curse, is the recipient of this curse, through no fault of his own. The opinion of Riv'o comes down to a different perspective. No, 1 second, then we'll go to Riv'o. Then I'll ask him. Riv'o, that he sodomized him, would then kind of fit a story that we hear later on, which is Reuven and Bilhah, a story that we hear later on, which is Adoniyahu and Abishag, attempt, and of course, most famously, Avshalom and David's Pilagshim, which is that when somebody who is standing to inherit feels that the old man, the pater familias, has lost it and is on his way out, as a part of a power grab is to have relations with that person's consort. That's what's behind the Reuven Bilhah story, maybe. And that's certainly what's behind David's Pilagshim. David leaves 10 Pilagshim behind in Yerushalayim to make sure that Avshalom doesn't really claim the throne, because that would involve him taking those girls, and that's Achitophel's first piece of advice that Avshalom does. And so Riv'o might be that Cham is saying, look at father, he had a tough life. Teva, very difficult, and now it's over. Look at him; he's already, Averbud, and therefore I'm going to take over. How will I show I take over? Well, I'll take him, as it were. It's quite disgusting. We then don't understand the curse to Canaan, but that's what that perspective is. No, Nomi, you want to ask?
I'm just thinking with either of those interpretations, if you put that in context, I mean, it can go multiple ways. Why would he tell them? I guess if it's a power thing, then I'm in charge now, that would make sense. But then even in that case, why do they cover him now? Because it's not about him being uncovered. That's not the issue.
Right.
And why are they oh yeah, that's their first plan is to cover him instead of if it's a power thing, then they should say something about that, not just cover the
Exactly.
But if it's
Unless you want to say, Naomi, you guys hear what Naomi said. Great point. She says either one of these perushim of Rav or Shmuel leave us wondering why Shem and Yefet's reaction is simply the material one of covering him up. Because if he said, hey, guess what I did? I castrated father, so you won't have to worry about any more kids, then maybe the three of them should sit down and start dividing the world 3 ways. Or else, some sort of protest, but covering him doesn't seem to fit. And if it's Riv'o, he's saying, I'm the power guy, then maybe they should respond to it, saying, no, you're not the power guy, and that was the wrong grab of power. We're going to demote you. Instead, their covering up seems to be kind of a lower level response. I like what you're asking. It could be that we're looking at that still on a base level of them saying, this is what I did to father, and their first reaction is, father's been abused, and we want to go protect his honor. Could be.
But also, just if he did do that,
this, by the way, should be grossing us all out. Just want to put that note in.
But he sees that his father's naked.
Yeah.
And that's when this happens. In that case, does he have to wait for that? It's a little bit.
Does he have to what?
Wait for him to be naked. I feel like that also doesn't really.
Either that, or he saw an opportunity, or maybe it was a trigger to look at father, look at him. He's Nebuch, he's naked. He's an old guy who's, he's lost it. I'm going to take over. Maybe, could be. Charlotte, yeah.
Just to piggyback off what Naomi was saying, I feel like the covering up makes a lot of sense. It's very fitting when something has been taken advantage of or no longer, or doesn't have as much value anymore, and you want to give it value, you cover it.
Right, dignity. Excellent.
We cover up
Yeah.
a dead body after.
Very good. Very good. By the way, any crime scene,
Right.
the first thing you do is to cover the body, a little honor. Correct. Yeah, Bruce.
How did he know who did it to him?
Exactly. Good question. Right. Good question. So, there's an article that I cited on the bottom of page 1. And I have to tell you a backstory to this, which is, you'll either sympathize with it or you won't. A number of years ago, I had a regular early morning shiur, Parshat Shavua every week. That's kind of redundant, but it was every day of the week. And so Monday was an overview of the parsha. 2 was an introduction to a new parshan. Wednesday was a particular question. Thursday we would deal with that question. Friday was a quiz too. And so the week of Noach, I'm presented what I'm going to present to you. And then afterwards, I bumped into a colleague who's from a different orientation. No, that sounds wrong. It's a different religious orientation. And I suggested to him, like, what would you say if this is what happened? What I'll suggest to you. And his response was I'll never forget this. This is 15 years ago. He said, who said it? I said, well, I just said it. He said, no, but who said it that you said it? That was his words. Who said it that you said it? So I said, what does it matter? He said, yeah, you can't say something like that unless somebody else said it. Right? So I could, always play a trick. Say, well, I just told some other guy, he told me back, so it's good. And his take was that you cannot see anything innovative in the text unless, you've got somebody who's got ZL after their name, who's recognized as part of the... which, of course, is coming from a very, very different school. But I'll admit that I got this from an article, and I was attending a shiur by my very dear friend and teacher, Professor Yonatan Grossman, many years ago. We were talking about this episode. And as a footnote, he referenced this article, and then he said, interesting article, I don't like it, and he gave a whole different take. I read the article, and I was sold on it. And with, deference to my teacher, Professor Grossman, I still think that this is pshat. We start with this midrash. The midrash picks up on what you mentioned earlier about the spelling of Ohalo. Ohalo is spelled with a hey instead of an avav. And the midrash in source 2 picks up on it and says, Ohala ktiv b'toch ohala shel ishto. Meaning, where was Noach naked? Which, by the way, goes a ways to explaining the castration thing. Because that means Noach is naked in his wife's tent. He's attempting to reproduce. Which would then explain why Cham steps in and says, I don't want that to happen. All right? But what it means is that now suddenly the flavor of this is different. It's not Noach's private tent where he's gotten drunk and is naked. He's in the tent with his wife. But it's important to note, and this is something that we often fall into this trap. I spoke earlier about how language changes. In Tanakh it changes, and it changes in Tanakh rabbinic literature. But we have to remember that Sefer Bereshit was not written by Noach. It wasn't written by Avraham. It was written and, shall we say, communicated at roughly the same time as Sefer Vayikra and Sefer Devarim in the desert. Which means the language of Chumash is consistent. And that way a word that shows up in Bereshit, if it's not a foreign word, the way that a word in Bereshit will show up, we have foreign words in Bereshit, will be consistent with the way it shows up anywhere else in Chumash. So you take a look at the story again, and what do you see? In the key verse, which is Pasuk Chafbet, Vayar Cham Avichanan et Ervat Aviv. What does Lirot Erva mean in Vayikra? Please take a look at sources 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, on the second page. And tell me, what is that idiom, Lirot Erva, literally to see nakedness? What does it mean in Vayikra? To have relations. Now, it gets even more tricky when you take a look carefully at selection 3. Ervat Avicha. Now, by the way, all of the arayot are addressed to men. Doesn't mean women are not involved. It's just addressed from the male perspective. All right? So now, Ervat Avicha, which means, literally, the nakedness of your father. Vervat imcha lo tigale. And the nakedness of your mother. Now, what is that a warning against? Don't do what? With whom?
Your parents.
Okay, it actually just means your mother. Your father's covered under another clause. It's a little later in the list. Imcha hi lo tigale ervata. The text takes it very, very carefully, which means ervat avicha is a way of saying imcha. So now ervat avicha shouldn't be translated only as the nakedness of your father, meaning your father not being clothed, or idiomatically having relations with your father. It means having relations with somebody that your father is intimate with. And you see it explicitly in the next pasuk. Ervat eish avicha lo tegale ervat avicha. Let's say your father's married to somebody who's not your mother. You're not allowed to have relations with her because she's called ervat avicha. Now turn the page and look at our story. Vayar cham avichanan et ervat aviv. Now what did Ham do? And remember whose tent we're in. What did Ham do? He had relations with his mom. We don't know that it's rape. He had relations with his mom. We'll assume that he has relations with his mom. But now let's move forward. And now let's read from here again with fresh eyes. Vayar Cham Avichanan, and again we're wondering why is Cham Avichanan, Eit Ervat Aviv, Vayagei L'shnei Achav Bachutz. What does he now do? He goes out and tells his brothers what? I had relations with mom. Why would he tell them that? I'm in charge of the family. This is Reuven and Bilhah. Now, so their reaction is very simply, let's start with dignity. And what do? And notice how it says, what do they cover up? Their mom. And perhaps it's mentioned twice because they cover them both up. In any case, they go and try to at least make it as dignified as possible. Now, remember we mentioned earlier between Pasuk Chaf Aleph and Chaf and Chaf Aleph that there's a time gap between planting, and we miss it because the Pasukim are sequential and are immediate, but there's a time gap of several years. Vayiketz Noach mieno, Noach wakes up, and then Vayedat Asher Asa lo b'no katan. What does he realize? What does he realize several months later? His wife is showing.
His wife is what?
Showing. Freguntavo. And so now, who does she have inside? Somebody who's going to be named Canaan.
Why no?
What?
Why no?
What?
Why is this by Katzilach no? It's several months later.
No. Vayikasach meino is part one. Part one. And then at a later point, Vayedat Asher Asa lo b'no katan.
So what does Katzilach no add?
Good question. You have the same thing, by the way, with what?
He can't do his sense.
Can't do a sense, can't do awareness. And by the way, at this point, he probably had no idea of what happened. He would have no way of knowing. But Vayedat Asher Asa lo b'no katan, at a later point, he realizes. Now, he might not know who did it, but he's probably going to find out.
How do you know it was Hamza?
What?
How do you know it was from Hamza?
Exactly. So he might not know who it is, who's the cause of his wife being pregnant, and probably does a little drish of a chakir and finds out. And maybe he already trusts Shem and Yefet a little bit more.
And maybe the wife tells him.
And maybe the wife tells him.
He probably doesn't need to know.
What?
It doesn't seem that he even needs to know that it was, like he just knows that someone did it.
Oh,
It's like
good. It's very important.
He knows what he did.
Yeah.
Who did it, and then he curses Canaan, not Ham.
You good, excellent. Very good question. So what happens? Okay, I have time. When I was a little kid, I used to listen to a radio show that some of you may remember called Dr. Demento. Remember Dr. Demento? Anybody? No? Oh, it was a great show. Anyways, good, thank you. Dr. Demento had all the novelty songs, and he had one particular song that was sung by a couple of country hicks sounding like just backwoods, Ozarks, called I'm My Own Grandpa. It was a great song, but it sounded like, right. And the truth was, it was a brilliant song, but because it's like the Andy Griffith problem. It doesn't matter what you say, you sound like an idiot, because you have that accent. And because the music and the accent, it sounded like they're a bunch of morons, but it's actually a brilliant song. And it described all sorts of Yechusim, and I remembered it vaguely. And then, 2 cycles ago, I teach Daf Yomi, 2 cycles ago, there was suddenly a video circulating among all the Magidei Shir of Daf Yomi, of that song with a video, with a chart, because it looked exactly like Yevamot. It was great. That's kind of what happens here. Watch. Noach sees this new child born who's named Canaan, or else in advance he says, Arur Canaan. Why is Canaan cursed? Because Canaan is a mamzer. And now what is the status of mamzer? Eved Avadim Yel Echav. He'll be a slave too. Now who are his brothers?
His uncles.
His brothers are his uncles. Because
His mother.
his mom is the mom of Shem and of Yefet and of his father and of him. Ich. Yes, ich. Big ich. But the Torah is not all that concerned with ich. The Torah is concerned with telling us like it is and to lay it straight. And so now, Vayomer Baruch Adonai Elohei Shem b'yichnan eved lamo. Right? And so you understand now, he's clarifying. Canaan will be a slave to his brother Shem and his brother Yefet. And that's how this story ends. Now again, back before dissecting a little bit at the end of this, this is the last story we hear about Noach. And no matter how much of a victim Noach might be here, he doesn't end as a victim. He ends as a man who's cursing his own children. He's cursing Ham indirectly. More importantly, he's cursing an innocent kid who is the result of his own father's jump to power and his own mother/grandmother's, go figure that one out, quiescence with it or disempowerment, whatever. Doesn't really say anything nice about Noach. So I think that on that judgment level. Now, here's the interesting piece about the story I told you where somebody asked me, who said it that you said it? You understand why this guy got upset. This guy got upset because what I said was not Rashi. How can you say it, you know? So if you look at the back page, you'll see something curious that happens, that happened to me a number of years ago. I've been giving this year for a number of years, different places. And then somebody out of the blue sent me a scan of a page of the commentary on Chumash by Rav Wolf Heidenheim called Torat Elohim. It took me a while to actually track it down. And here I finally was able to get it. And he says the following thing, without benefit of any article by two guys who I think teach at Princeton, because this is in the 19th century. Farshim acherim deot acherot. He goes through all the different opinions about what happened, because everybody starts with Jenna's question, which is, what happened here? Something big had to happen to make this terrible response. And everybody has, Serso, Rivo, he quotes that. The kulam bilti mityashvim al pshuto melitzat halashon. Says every one of the comments just doesn't work within pshat, within the words. V'anireh lefi pshuto lefi kavanat hatevot v'hamelitza sh'hamaseh kein haya. He says, based on simple reading of the text, this is what it looks like happened. That's what he says. Cham ba el eshet aviv b'teva v'holid mimena Canaan. Now, he does one thing that I disagree with. He says that this happened in the Teva. There is a midrash that Cham, unlike the other two brothers, continued to have relations while in the Teva. The rest of the family abstained from them, either because of a sense of mourning, like Yosef didn't have kids during the 7 years of famine, right, that it's inappropriate. But Veloni bar Noach miasa masara ze Velino ben Revi'i ajin kalei hanyan al yedei masesh zupar bekan kamo shafaresh. And then he goes through the whole story. I disagree with him because I think that this story is a post-Diluvian story. It's after the flood. It's after the whole flood is over. But that's quibbling on details. What's critical, and this is the piece that I want to bring out, is that we start by reading the story, and this is the methodology part of it. We start by reading the story and immediately, without benefit of the color on the page, and immediately keep our eyes open for strange things. Immediately at the beginning of the story, we're told, Cham avi Canaan. And that should jump out at us. And why are you telling me that? That's so bizarre. And that means I should keep my eye, that's what foreshadowing is, I should keep my eye out for something about Canaan in this story that's going to be critical. So a direct way to go is to say that Canaan did this terrible act, whatever it was, and that it masks it by saying Cham did it, because the father was responsible for his kid's behavior, and the kid was a minor, etc., etc., but that's far from shot. So I just keep the question in mind, which is, why is Canaan mentioned here? I read through in the second methodological point, and I'm reviewing, that you have to keep in mind is, be in the story, in the real story. I mentioned this in the previous year. It's critical for us when we're reading Tanakh, a narrative in Tanakh, to read it as a real narrative in real time with real people, real human beings, real grapes, real wine, real clothes. That's vital because otherwise we run the risk of turning the story into, I'm sorry to say, a fairy tale. And something that becomes distant and not real anymore. And as I mentioned in the last session, it's something that the secularists and certain more insularists, I don't know if a better way to say it, have in common when studying Tanakh, is the stories aren't real. One school says they never happened. The other said they happened, but not like it says in the text. And they're not real. They're not real people. You know, the minute you got Moshe Rabbeinu 15 feet tall, jumping 15 feet in the air with a stick 15 feet tall, 15 feet long, hitting Og Melech HaBashan in the ankle, you're in a different universe. And the stories are no longer real. Moshe's not real anymore. And that's a terrible crime. It's important to keep it real. So you read the story and you realize between Pasuk Chaf and Pasuk Chaf Aleph, there has to be a gap of time, which means, at least in this story, if not in other stories, we're willing for consecutive phrases to be years apart, but they're told for the purpose of the narrative that way. And we keep that possibility in mind as we read, that may give us more flexibility in reading. Keeping an eye on odd spellings that you guys picked up on. Oh, hello, with a hey. The Midrash picks up on it, but you guys picked up on it also, which is great. I say, well, what's the text hinting to? We read oh, hello, but it's written oh, hala. What's going on? Okay? And then the key phrase, which is, of course, Pasuk Chaf Bet, which becomes the core of the whole story. Vayar Cham Avichanan Eiter Vat Aviv. That phrase. Say, well, if taken literally, the way we would read it in regular Hebrew, we end up turning around saying, sorry, this is the reaction. That's a big deal. All right, it's not nice. That's something I would advocate for, but who cares? But then, so immediately we're driven by saying there must be something more going on here. Then why say it that way? And that's part of Heidenheim's difficulty with the other comments, is that Riv'o and Serso don't fit Vayar Cham Avichanan Eiter Vat Aviv. Right? They might have been Vayeda Cham Et Aviv. Except that that's rarely used in that kind of context, but you wouldn't expect something like that. Instead, we just keep an open book on it, and that's also critical when studying. To note the questions, and remember the old adage, from a kasha starvinish, you don't die from a question, let the question remain out there, have as many questions as you got cooking, and then come to the end, and then reassess it, and say, well, what do I know about this phrase? This phrase does not show up elsewhere in Bereshit. This phrase does not really show up elsewhere in narrative in Chumash. But it shows up in spades in the law code of Vayikra. And what does it mean there? And then say, take that and read it back, and suddenly you see something very different. When you get to that, then suddenly things start to fall in place because you understand how Canaan is, unfortunately, roped into this. Now, on a historic level, why is this narrative there? Meaning, we're at Har Sinai, we're in the Midbar, we're somewhere where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is dictating this to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is writing this down, and it's now part of our permanent Torah. And then you got to say why. Why do we need to know this story at all? Any suggestions? Yeah.
Do you know why we're fighting the Canaan and what we're doing with the land?
So we're fighting the Canaanim because
Questionable people.
because they're people without any moral anchor because they have no yichus, right? Or the yichus is blemished. That, of course, raises a whole lot of other questions about, we're on the same side of it. Raises a lot of questions about how we can blame somebody for their circumstances, etc., and we can eradicate them. But it does, if you will, as we're about to enter Canaan, suddenly put Canaan in a much more negative light. Correct. And maybe also deems Canaan worthy of what station in society? Eved, which is why, what do we call a non-Jewish slave in halacha? Eved Kanani. Even though they're not Kananim. Eved Kanani typically are not Kananim. But we call them Eved Kanani. Yeah, what's your name? Sorry. Shlomo, right. Yeah. Sorry for the previous Shlomo comment, but I couldn't help it.
It's a new world,
Okay.
and we got to figure out what this new world is all about.
Okay.
And how it's going to be structured. And that's what's going on here.
Okay, good. Good.
Noah comes out of the teva, and he says this is the way.
So in other words, we need to know this entering the land because we need to know also who's who. We're part of Shem, and that puts us at the top of the ladder.
Well, we're getting the Torah, but we need to see the more universal perspective.
Beautiful. Okay, but on this particular story, I'm asking. Yeah, Avi.
Just to add to what was said before, to point out specifically Acharei Mot, which is talking about exactly this language of Shalhevet High.
Yeah.
It then continues.
Oh, very good.
Because literally, because of these exact sins, the land is spitting out the Canaan.
Right, which would then mean
going to happen to you.
Which would then mean that Canaan, as a people, seemed to continue the behavior that created them. Maybe. Okay, very good. Yeah, what's your name? Sorry. Sweet.
A few very quick comments, if you don't mind. So first of all, I don't think it's not necessary that there's a single mother for Ham, Shem, and Yafet. So Ham could have had relation with his mother.
You got that from Heidenheim's Eshet Aviv, right?
Actually, no. But
okay.
I think you got, Ervat Avi Halot Yigaleh refer to
Eshet Aviv. Eshet Aviv, yeah, sure.
Right, father's another wife of the father.
See, Ham, it wasn't as bad because it wasn't his own mom.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, I'm still grossed out.
Point. I think what is going on here is we have three. So Noah has three sons.
Yeah.
So there's a selection process. I think it mirrors to the Ram and Chala have three children. One is first. So there's a selection process going on. There's two children who stay.
Okay.
There is a parallel here, but by eight.
So you're saying this is sort of.
Actually,
you're saying this is sort of the background for starting the lineage of Abraham.
Right. There's a pre-diluvian cycle and this is the first diluvian cycle. So we
have 10 seconds.
Right. So the Vayat Kerem. So Hashem sets up the Gan Eden. They use the same word. It's only two times. Shows up in Bereshit. So there is a repetition again, right? So I think what we do need to talk about the context.
Kerem?
What?
Kerem, where?
No, not Kerem. The Hashem sets up the Gan Eden.
Yeah.
And then here Vayat Kerem.
Okay.
Noah sets up the Kerem.
Okay.
Right? And then if there's in Gan Eden you have the.
Okay, I'll have to ask you to keep the rest for afterwards because there are a couple other hands up.
Good.
Yeah, no, I'll hang around. Yeah, run your name.
I think you just answered my question. Tell me if I got the question right. It makes sense that this is being told by Moshe before the Jews go into Canaan because when Noach says, "Vayomer Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem," did he know that then, or only at the time of Moshe do we know that Shem's God was God? In other words, at the time of Noach, wasn't the same Hashem that Shem?
That's a big problem with Shmot Vav. If Hashem Nolada to them, how do we deal with that? That's a shir by itself. Shem Hashem and Bereshit and all that. It's difficulty.
So at this point even, Hashem's only Elokei
Hashem what?
Hashem's only Elokei Shem.
I don't know. And that's a topic that would take us another 40.
Sorry, okay.
And I didn't prepare a source sheet. I don't know. Okay. Last comment goes to Naomi. You guys, by the way, you give yourselves a hand. You guys have been great, and especially our participants under the age of 30. 40. Okay. But all of you guys, it's one of the things I really enjoy about the shiur, and thank you, Rabbi Helfgott, for coordinating, is that when I ask questions, people participate. And it's great. You guys came here to learn, and learning has to be active. If I could lecture, but that's boring, and you don't have good coffee, you're going to sleep. Yeah, no, finish this off. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, I think in a way, Noah is establishing the concept of the homes there. We see that throughout, these ideas that are both in the Torah and also just kind of part of our moral, society. So he's establishing this idea that, it seems obvious to us that it's disgusting, but it's specifically this is something that are going to be cursed for. And then we see that throughout later.
Excellent. So what you're saying is, if I understand correctly, what Naomi's saying is that Noach is actually setting up the notion, not only of Mam Zerut, but that also of your lineage impacting on who you are.
Yes, and I would say the connection to Gan Eden, that's the first time that we start establishing these moral ideas in our own world.
Mm-hmm.
The Eitzim gives us that power essentially, which
Very good.
But then that is when they first are embarrassed of their nakedness, so that's like when that begins.
Oh, very good.
They establish like a negative notion with something, and then
Right. And that might be part of the reason that one of the Midrashim is that the Eitz Hadat was a vine,
Yeah.
which leads to all of this. Yeah, okay, I apologize, but I'm going to just take the last couple seconds here. And I'll stick around if anybody wants to schmooze about the shir at all. I've really enjoyed teaching you guys, and I hope that we have a chance to interact. My email address is at the bottom of the piece, and if you can't read it, come up to me afterwards or ask Rabbi Helfgott. I'd love to hear from you guys, especially if anybody who was in the previous year has any comments on how Rabbi Yoshua and Kalev. That'd be great. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of today and tomorrow if you're here.